Have you ever just stopped and wondered how these gigantic multinational companies seem to have a plan for, well, for everything? I mean, how do they navigate a world that's constantly changing, constantly throwing curveballs? Okay, let's pull back the curtain on this, because today we're diving into the world of corporate fortune telling. And trust me, it's a methodical process that's way more strategic than you might think. Right? It's the billion-dollar question. They don't have a time machine, they definitely don't have a magic crystal ball, so what is their secret? Well, the answer is all about having a really structured, really strategic way of imagining what's just around the corner.
So let me introduce you to Carmen Ricardo. She works in long-term strategy for a major oil company. And her job, in her own words, is to anticipate. She's not just looking at the next quarter's profits. No. She is looking decades, even a century into the future to get her company ready for huge shifts in society and the economy.
Now, this wild job that Carmen does actually has a name. It's a cornerstone of modern corporate strategy, and it's called scenario planning. And it's all about imagining futures that haven't even happened yet.
Okay, so here's the most important thing to get. Scenario planning isn't about predicting one single correct future. That's impossible. It's about creating a whole bunch of believable stories about what could happen. You could almost think of it like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but for a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
And just look at the time scale we're talking about here. I mean, it's wild. 20 years from now, Carmen's team is already thinking about alternative fuels. 50 years out, they're prepping for totally new economies. And 100 years from now, they're trying to imagine an energy industry that we might not even recognize. Now that is some serious long-term thinking. So this brings us to a field with let's say a more mystical-sounding name, Futurology. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Fortune tellers, psychic hotlines, that kind of thing. And Carmen even admits that people sometimes see it that way. But as we're about to see, the reality is way more structured. This is where we need to be really clear. Futurology is not about guesswork or staring into a crystal ball. It is a methodical process. Now, it's not an exact science, of course not. Nobody can be 100% right about the future. But it's all based on getting experts together to build a shared, structured idea of what's likely to happen. And one of the coolest tools in their toolkit is something called the Delphi Method. I know, it sounds like something out of ancient Greece, right? But it's actually a brilliant way to cancel out individual biases and get a whole lot closer to a credible forecast. Okay, so here's how it works. You get a group of experts together. First, they all make their own predictions privately. Then, and this is the genius part, those predictions are shared with the whole group, but anonymously. This is so important because it means people can critique an idea based on what it is, not on who said it. The experts comment, they revise, and they repeat this whole cycle over and over until, slowly but surely, they start to agree. It's an amazing way to filter out the noise and build a collective vision. All right, but planning for the future isn't just about spotting opportunities and getting excited. It's also about preparing for the absolute worst-case scenario. And this is where we pivot from scenario planning to its close cousin, risk management. And for a global company, believe me, the list of potential crises is long and, frankly, terrifying. Political chaos could mean their property gets seized. Working with the wrong people can absolutely destroy a company's reputation. And then you've got the stuff we all think about, environmental disasters like oil spills, or something as basic as a fire taking out all their computer systems. But out of all those risks, what's the one that really keeps executives up at night? It's this. See, fines can be paid, environmental cleanups can eventually be finished, but the damage to a company's image, the way you and I see them, that can last for generations. Trust, once you lose it, is incredibly hard to get back. Because a crisis is one thing, but a badly handled crisis, that is something else entirely. That's what turns a manageable problem into a complete PR catastrophe, the kind of thing that can tank a company's value for years to come. So if you know disaster can strike at any moment, how do you even prepare? Well, you build a corporate safety net. This is where contingency planning comes in. It's all about creating a playbook for when things go sideways. A contingency plan or a crisis management plan is exactly what it sounds like. It's a detailed, step-by-step guide for what to do when a potential crisis becomes a real one. It is literally the in case of emergency break glass instructions for an entire corporation. And building this safety net is a very methodical process. It starts by identifying every single thing that could go wrong. Then, for each risk, they develop a specific response plan. And, so crucially, they build in backups, like having computer systems at a completely different location. to make sure that if a disaster does happen, the business doesn't just grind to a halt. It's all part of what they call a business continuity plan. And that right there really brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. At the end of the day, whether we're talking about scenario planning for 100 years from now or contingency planning for tomorrow, the goal is exactly the same. It's about being flexible, it's about being resilient, it's about accepting that you can't know exactly what's going to happen, but you can be prepared for almost anything.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. These massive corporations spend billions of dollars preparing for their future. But what about yours? What's the biggest potential risk on your personal horizon? And what's your plan to manage it if it actually happens? Definitely something to think about.